Okay, Dad, it's July 1st, 2012, and Heather and I were just wanted to go through some of the Kramus and Stiers history, and I know you have some notes in your notebook about sort of our family tree.
Yes, back in 1987 when I went out to DePaul Alumni Board meeting, my father and Opal and Grandma Stiers helped me go through part of the family tree. They started with the Reverend Andrew Loudon, who had been a circuit rider in Ohio and Indiana, born November 7th, 1830. He then married Catherine Boring, and they were the parents of Alice Loudon, who would eventually marry George Kramus, and that would be I forgot the greats and the grands.
That's all right. That would be Heather and mine's great-great-grandparents.
Yeah. So they had lots of children. Ida, whom I knew, Cora, whom I knew, Lily was my father's mother. She died before I was born. The other children of George and Alice, I didn't know.
So you knew Ida and Cora?
Right.
When you were a child?
Ida lived out in the country, so we went to visit her after church on Sunday. And Cora lived in Rushville, down near the railroad track.
Wow. So
her husband was a Fuller Brushman salesman.
Did you ever know George and Alice?
No.
Or had they had already passed away?
Died, yeah.
And I think this picture is of George that's of George Washington Kramus and Alice Loudon.
Right. So that's very distinguished looking. I might have, when I was a very tiny child, was taken to a house to meet my father's grandparents. So that I could have met them, but I was very, very young.
Tiny?
Yeah.
Do you remember that, or that someone told you? Or you sort of remember?
It's half and half. But the legend was that I went and combed their hair and they combed my hair.
That's neat.
But I was very young and they were very old.
And then, so Lily was Heather and mine's great-grandmother.
Right. She got very ill and died. Again, I forget what it was, but it was something that today they could cure, but then they didn't know how to do it.
How to do that.
Yeah.
And then on the Stiers side,
so, yeah, okay. So, my father's father was Benjamin Franklin Stiers, and he was the son of Lyford Stiers and Mary Stark. We were talking about how the Starks got in. There's where the Starks come in. But, Lyford and Mary had Ben Stiers, Lona Stiers, Charlie Stiers, and Earl Stiers. Uncle Earl lived in Newcastle and lived at the YMCA, so I don't know if he was a salesman and single. Charlie, whom my brother is named after, a nice picture of him playing baseball.
Oh, that's cool.
Somewhere in the collection. Yeah.
Oh, that's neat.
He played pro ball? Like he's a card?
Must have been some sort of semi-pro ball.
But you got like a card or something?
The international, not the international, but many of the factories had teams in those days. Yeah, so I'm sure it was a factory team.
And then Lana?
Don't know anything about her at all. She's a mystery.
Yeah. And so did you know Lana, Charlie, or Earl?
Knew Earl quite well. He was around a lot. Then when Grandpa Stiers, Ben Franklin Stiers, turned 65, he ran off with Earl, left Indiana and went to California, to Santa Anita, to play the horses.
Oh, so Ben and Earl ran off together.
Yeah. That was very traumatic.
And what year was that?
I'm not quite sure what it was, but Ben was 65, I think. They crashed the car going out, and Harold had to help them in Nebraska to keep on going.
To keep the car.
So, and they ended up at Ben Jr.'s house, or is this?
No, San Diego, California, which is just outside of Los Angeles. There's this big historic racetrack there. And they ran out of money about 8-9 months later. And so one morning about 5 o'clock on the farm, we heard the back door squeak. And when we got up later, we found Grandpa asleep in the back room in the smokehouse.
So they had come back.
So they'd come back. And weeks later, we heard the door squeak again early in the morning, and Grandma Stiers had come to take Grandpa home. She had forgiven him.
What about Earl? Did he just go back to his place on the
I
track?
think he went back to the Y in Newcastle.
So our great-grandfather then, Ben Stiers, was married to Lily, but then after Lily died, he remarried.
Yeah, Hazel.
Grandma, great.
Yeah. I had her name here somewhere, but I don't know. We'll see quickly.
Do you remember what Hazel's married name is?
Mo. Right, Dad?
No, that's her. See, that was her daughter by her first marriage. And
Right.
And
Did she go back to her?
Mull was the married name of the daughter. Yeah.
So her first husband was Mo.
No. Grandma, great husband. I don't know what his name was.
Okay.
But her oldest child was Ruby Mull.
Right.
And Ruby married Hugh Mull. So
Okay.
Oh, okay. That's how she got Mull.
that's
So you
where
don't
Mull-
know the.
I don't know.
Okay, that's
We'd
all
have
right.
to ask Phil or Brenda.
Mm-hmm. We're getting the pieces. Trying to figure out how all the pieces connect.
Or Linda.
So,
Linda.
Lily and Ben had several children,
Uh,
including your father, Lowell.
Right. And I don't have a list of those here,
So is Harold the oldest, Dad?
but
Or is Ralph?
well, you could stop. We've got that in the other book if you want to. We're talking about the children born to Benjamin Franklin Stiers and Lily Dale Kramus. Lida was the firstborn, followed by Harold Emerson, interesting, and then Lowell Alfred, Ralph, and then Opal, and then Chase, and then Benjamin Franklin Jr. So those were the children.
You know any reason why they were called those names? Or just they like those names?
Never heard explanation. Because most of these are not in the tree. I know of, the family tree.
Right, and these were all people that Heather and I knew growing up, because they were all still alive.
They were all born in the 20th century.
What year was your father born?
He was born on March 3rd, 1910, in Rush County. My notes from 1987 says that Aunt Mary took care of him when he was born. But he was sort of taken down by Ed Logan's farm, wherever that was. I think that's down near New Salem.
So Mary was Lily's sister.
Yeah. And Grandma Alice was taking care of Lily as she was dying. So that's why he, I guess, was sent away. Other kids must have been sent away too, but my notes don't say where they went.
Okay. Does it say when Lily died? What year?
Lily died in 1927.
Okay.
She is buried at Goddard, 8th month, 9th day.
So, right. So she died, and Lowell was very young. We think about, what, 14?
We can figure it out if she
20,
said
he was 17.
17.
Yeah, and he made a great deal of that, because they, at that point, I think, were living on the hilltop. And he drove a school bus for the Milroy school system.
Oh, wow.
And then he became the chief cook and bottle washer for the family, according to him. I'm not sure that was ever supported by his siblings.
That was his side of the story.
Side of the story. We never heard it contradicted, so yeah. He was quite proud of that.
So, and did he, so the younger children, Ralph, Opal, Chase, and Ben Jr. would have been, especially Ben, would have been really probably quite young.
He was 4 years old when she died, so he was very young.
And when Ben got remarried to Hazel, they had a child.
Yes, Richard. Hazel already had a daughter, Ruby. and who soon got married to Hugh Mull, a farmer in Rush County.
And so Richard and Ben were about the same age, or we might not know.
We don't know that.
But we think that
But
no, they're not the same age.
Lily had Ben. 4 years later, she died. You got to give some time to meet Hazel.
Oh, okay. It was.
Then you got to have time to conceive.
Gotcha.
Richard.
Okay. Yeah.
So they are
But
not of similar
They're not
age.
of similar.
They all
age.
remember Richard at the hilltop,
Being a baby.
typical baby, and all the problems associated therewith.
Heather and I were just talking earlier because we know Ben and Richard were really close.
Yeah, being the youngest, they were quite bonded. Yeah.
Just different in age.
So
What I was saying was that Ben was very close to Lolita's son.
Oh, to Lolita's son. I'm sorry, I got
Yes.
confused.
well, they were
Bob Brown.
Oh, right.
that whole younger
Okay.
contingent spent more time. Of course, they lived longer, so they spent more time together. When Richard was living in Naples, Ben Jr. came often to visit him there, and Chase would come. And then in some of the movies that we have of the family, early family, Chase took a bunch of movies at the hilltop where Ben Jr. came to visit Bob Brown.
Oh, that's right. I think we've.
So that's really well documented, that relationship.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Ben and Shirley had their camper, so they toured the country in their camper.
Well, what Ben told me was when his mom died, Grandpa Stiers couldn't handle all the kids, and so he was sent to live with Lolita when he was little.
Oh.
Because there's no one to look after him during the day. And that's why they're really close as brothers.
Okay.
So your dad, Lowell, met your mom, Louise, and that when they got married, it might even, I don't know, it might even say in there, Dad, if you...
They met in Russia.
Okay, so your parents met in Rushville?
Do you know the story of how they met?
Actually, I don't remember. Dad was working at the local Dodge dealer. He was an automobile mechanic. And just down the street, Mother was working in the law office, sort of the executive secretary. Dad was making $9 a week. Mother was making $12 a week.
Wow.
They dated about 5 years, according to my memory. Of course, this was in the Depression. They both got out of school in 29 and 30, so the Depression was just beginning. So they got married the 8th of August, 1936, and I was born July 3rd, 1938, so a couple years later. And Lolita, I think, took care of me because Mother continued to work to help support things.
Do you remember that, or do you have any memory?
No. She changed my diapers.
So not when you were like 5 or 6?
No.
And you guys were still living in town, and
Yeah, we
in
initially
Rushville.
lived next to Grandma Molson on Sexton Street. When we were back in Indiana last month, Mother and I drove by there. But it's all changed now.
okay, so Grandma Molson, because Louise is a Molson.
Right.
Yes.
Dad, did Lolita live in town too?
Lolita was initially married to Joe Brown, who was the fire chief of Rushville. But he was such an alcoholic in her mind that she divorced him, which was an enormous scandal in the family. Because she sucked it up and didn't divorce anybody, but she did.
But did she had children by
Joe Brown.
Because-
Bob Brown is a Brown.
Because I was going to say, because the first wedding I went to was Kathy Brown, and she was Lolita's granddaughter.
Yeah, right. In Levittown, Pennsylvania, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a huge deal. But Lolita then became one of the religious leaders of the family in the Church of God in Anderson, Indiana.
Okay.
Was she the first of the family to become Church of God? Because Grandma and Grandpa weren't.
No. They were members of the Christian church. Well,
The Methodists, right?
my parents were Methodists. And my father's parents, his father and his second wife, Hazel, were members of the Christian church in Homer. And Mother, the Molsons, were all members of the Methodist church in Rushville. So when Dad and Mom got married, they became
They started
active in the
going
Methodist
to
church.
the Methodist.
Yeah.
And then you were born in 1939.
38.
1938, that's right.
Yeah. In Rushville. I think I was one of the earliest kids in the tribe to be born in a hospital.
Instead of just at home.
Instead of at home, yeah. So that was, Rushville had a tiny hospital.
Because weren't all of Lily's children born at the Hilltop?
Or on Chuck's farm.
Oh, okay.
One of the two places.
That's right. Because they lived in that house for a while?
Well, I got notes here. Grandpa lost the house either in 1927 or 1928.
Chuck's house.
Yeah.
Not the Hilltop.
Right. No, and he kept the Hilltop, but the early part of the Depression caught him. And so when he and Hazel got married, they moved to the Hilltop.
Okay, because I know that sometime, and Chuck can tell the story, when they were tearing stuff out, they found stuff in the walls, family pictures or something.
I just remember the 16 layers of wallpaper.
But I can't remember how that all fit together. Okay, so you were the oldest of the three brothers.
Right.
And Jim was the middle?
Chuck came along in 1943, and Jim came along after the war in 1946. Jim was born on Dad's birthday, March 3rd, 1946.
And when was Jim born?
That was Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
1946. Chuck was born in 1943.
In January.
January 17th. Chuck and I remember Jim's birth. We were sleeping and they were on Jackson Street at that point. We were sleeping in our separate beds in the front of the house. And Dad took us in and put us in the middle of his bed and Mother's bed and said he was off to the hospital with Mother. And we were to walk down the alley to Grandma Mawson's house and wait. So
You mean when you woke up from the bed?
Yeah. So we got our courage up and hand in hand went trudging down the alley.
Because Chuck was only 3 years old.
Yeah. So we were pretty nervous.
And you weren't very much older. You were only 6?
Yeah.
No, you were 9.
Yeah. But anyway, we felt very young.
And Grandma didn't live very far from you, right?
No.
She was like a block away.
Well, maybe 3 blocks. But
And Grandma Mawson's first name? Remember?
Give me a minute.
That's okay.
Sally.
That's right, Sally
Grandma
Mawson.
Sally.
And she was married to Harry Mawson. Harry was the section foreman for the Pennsylvania Railroad that ran between Rushville and Shelbyville. He was responsible for the care of the tracks and things.
Cool. I knew we had a railroad person.
And by coincidence, that's the railroad that used to run in front of where Grandma Hazel had a place down in Homer.
Is that where we have the spike from?
Yeah.
The
But
silver spike?
That's neat.
They retrieved all the steel from the rails at one point.
And then, how long did you live in Rushville before you moved out to the farm?
Till 1949. Yeah. Dad had always wanted to go back to the farm. Thought it'd be a good place to raise 3 boys. Mother miraculously agreed with him. So in 1949, they were able to buy the farm that my father had worked on while he was growing up. And it was 160 acres. He couldn't afford to buy that much. So he went to the neighbor, Bill English, and sort of said, can we make a deal? I'll buy 80 acres, you buy 80 acres, and then when I have the money, I'd like to buy the other 80 acres back. And they shook hands. So during the Second World War, kids were encouraged to buy war bonds. So we took our nickels and dimes into school and accumulated these books which turned into war bonds. So part of the ceremony of buying the farm, I was invited to take my war bonds, cash them in, and make them a contribution towards buying the farm.
That's neat.
So that was really, I'm very proud of that. And in Helen Ross's office, who's our lawyer, I handed them over.
So, Dad, did you live in just one house in Rushville, or did you live?
I was born. When I was born, I was raised over in Sexton's for about 2 or 3 years of age. Then they bought a lovely house on Jackson Street, and so up in 1949, I lived there. Yeah.
Richard, what's the name of the family that owned the funeral parlor?
Moster.
Did the Mosters have a house on Jackson?
I don't. They were wealthy. They lived out. We used to call it Mortgage Row.
Well, that's what I was that's what I thought. Maybe that's what I thought Jackson was.
No, it was a pretty ordinary street.
And so then, what was it like for you and Chuck and Jim living on the farm when you moved?
Chuck has some really great memories of all this. What we ate, what we didn't eat, the rough conditions of our living. But my memory is more generic. I mean, there was no running water in the house. There was a pump at the back door, so you had to prime it and then pump fresh water. There was no central heating. There was just a big base burner in what eventually became the kitchen. So we would all stand there at night and get warm and then rush off. But three of us in a bed was pretty comfortable.
You were at least warm together.
Chuck remembers great fights as to who got the middle, but I don't have any memory of that.
And the outhouse.
And the toilet was out in the back of the chicken yard. So a year later, Dad hired Uncle Red, who was Opal's husband, and his crew to come in and dig a basement under the house and put a furnace in and began to install the plumbing for a bathroom.
It was coal burning,
Water.
right?
It was coal burning, yeah. You could burn coal or wood.
Or wood, okay.
Do you remember, did you all have chores and things you had to do?
Well, as a part of this getting ready for the inside toilet, I had to dig the septic system out in the West chicken yard. So I took my radio and listened either to the Red Sox, or the Cincinnati Reds, or the Chicago Cubs games.
While you're out there digging?
Because they had day games in those days, so I could dig away and listen to the game.
You still have day games out here for the
Mother
Rockies.
would come out and encourage me to keep digging rather than listening to the game. She'd bribe me with either iced tea or lemonade.
Good bribe out there.
And then what about school? What school did you go to?
Into chores. My responsibility was to milk the 2 cows. We had 2 cows, and we milked them by hand. Which 9 months of the year was much fun, but 3 months of the year in the winter was cold. It was tough. But fortunately, between the udder of the cow and her back leg was nice and warm. So you milk with one hand.
And then switch.
Switch, right. And they were pretty docile, so they didn't kick the bucket over when you were milking. We had lots of pigs, and they were next to the barn, so I would slop them with various food. Mother's responsibility were the chickens.
Always was.
Yeah, so there's a nice poem that a poet wrote when she died about her taking care of the chickens.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah, it's upstairs in my office. I'll show it to you.
Okay.
Chuck gave it to me.
Wow, that's
So-
very nice.
So when you moved to the farm, there was the house. Were any of the barns there?
Yeah, the main barn was there.
The big barn.
And we were farming with horses, so the horses were in the barn. They were nice horse stalls, very, very nice. And the grain was stored in the barn in various bins up in the second level.
So no silos.
Not at that point. No, silo came later.
So the big barn, did you have the pig pens that were next to the big
Yeah,
barn?
yeah.
And then there was, next to that was another
It
barn.
was the corn crib, yeah.
Was the corn crib.
A double corn crib.
Did you have the corn crib back then?
So the corn was stored in there, yeah. And then there was a great garage, which Dad had his many tools in it. And then there was the wash house, which was sort of a catch-all for things.
So those though were next to the house.
Yeah.
So first was the wash house, and then was the garage.
And then was the chicken house. One of
The chicken coop.
chicken coop where the feed was kept, and then the big chicken house.
What about
That was the other fun thing. Female chicken house. Chicken manure is very strong in ammonia, so you really had to be brave to get in there.
Shovel that out.
It took about 2 hours to shovel it out.
with pickaxe?
It was great for the fields, but ooh.
Was the gas tank always on there? Or did they come in and put that in?
The gas well or the gas tank?
Both.
Well, we had to have a gas tank for well, we didn't have a tractor at first. The first year we
Right.
farmed with horses. Then Dad bought an old Farmall 20, which Grandpa and I were in the East Field. He was learning how to run out. So we came up, turned around at the other end, and nicely we came down towards the road, and he forgot how to stop it. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Into the field, into the ditch, into the fence.
This was with a tractor.
This old tractor. Of course,
This is your dad or your grandfather?
this is Grandpa Stiers, yeah. So, no, Dad knew how to do it. So, when Dad came home that night, he had to back it out. So this is how you work the gears. You take over top, don't
It's kind of like learning a computer back then.
Right. But again, one of the fun things that first year was having a team of 4 horses hitched up on a drag, and you broke the clods in the field after it had been plowed. That was fun, sitting on an old ammunition box with these 4 horses. That was a great thrill.
I'm glad you think that's fun because Chase didn't think it was very fun. That was his job when
Was
they
it?
lived at the hilltop. Was being
He did
the
not
weight
like
to
that.
bring
No.
make sure that the plow shields were under the ground.
And then there was a straw lot behind the barn and the corn crib, and there was a pig farrowing house up there, as well as a second barn.
That's where the pigs had the babies. Was
Yeah.
a farrowing house.
And the 2 winters when we had these humongous storms, walking up there in the snow and the storms to take care of the pigs was really scary. Walking up, because it seemed to me the snow was up to my belt.
Could have been.
You got some pictures. Grandpa took pictures of the snow when it was that high.
It was because then we'd get snowed in for days because the road was closed.
Right.
But often we'd invite Grandpa Ben Jr. and Grandma Hazel to come over, and then we'd butcher a pig and a cow at that point, because you had 3 or 4 days to do all that.
What an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So, Dad, when you first moved to the farm, you didn't have any refrigeration either, right?
That's right.
The ice guy came and delivered the ice.
Well, no, it was more. We just didn't have it. Yeah.
Just didn't have ice, period.
Yeah. So it wasn't until we got the basement that then Mother bought a small freezer, and we raised about 100 frying chickens each summer. So then Chuck and I killed them and helped Mother dress those and cut them up, and they were put in there. And so that was the beginning. And then she got a bigger refrigerator unit down there.
When did you get electricity?
Well, they had electricity when we moved in.
Okay.
It just wasn't.
No water, no sewer,
Right.
It was
and no heat.
So when she got the freezer, I mean, was it what we would think of as a freezer, electric one?
Yeah, it sat on the floor. It just,
Mhm.
yeah. They were very popular on the farms because you could freeze the fruit that you raised and the vegetables. And
Right.
put it in there. Yeah. So that was a great advance in the variety of our eating.
So, Dad, did you have the water tank back then that was near the corn cribs?
Well, it was in the barn lot was the windmill.
Right,
and
right,
that
right.
was initially connected to what they called the horse tank.
So that would draw you water.
But Dad never used that. When he decided to upgrade and go to 4 cows, he wanted to turn that into a milk house. So he knocked out one of the walls. But the windmill pumped water to the east field, and we had cattle or pigs there. Then it pumped it up behind the big barn to the straw lot, and we had a big tank there that we watered animals that were in the straw lot.
That big sort of water tower thing. Was that what you're talking about, that you had the water in?
No, these were just sort of
Troughs.
metal troughs. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very simple kind of things. But in the winter, of course, they'd freeze, so you'd have to go out in the morning and break the ice, and after school, come home and break the ice again.
So the animals could.
Yeah.
And then the gas well, was there?
That was there, yeah. And part of the deal that Dad made with Bill English, that Bill could draw off of it. So it heated the little room as you came into the house. Had a little gas heater.
Get the level, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of gas stove as you came past the mudroom, that was the
Yeah.
gas?
Yeah, that was gas from that well. And we talked about converting the furnace to a gas furnace because, and then we discovered that the gas well wasn't really a well, that the city of Rushville was buying gas from the state of Texas, from one of the companies there.
Oh.
It was coming up in a pipeline, and they were pumping it into the ground, into these big caverns, and our well was in one of those caverns.
So you were
So we were borrowing gas
from Rushville.
from Rushville.
Did
So
they ever figure that out?
Everybody ever.
So when we were kids, did Grandpa get gas from there, or for his car, or for the
Oh,
tractors?
then he had the big gas tank. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
when he got that
Yeah,
put in.
yeah. And then Harry, who married one of Mother's sisters, Harry Harding, was the local city service gasoline dealer. So he would deliver gas to us. And later on, that was one of the great accidents. Jim was driving the John Deere when we had the big tractors, came in through the gate from the north lot and ran the wheel up on the gas tank and turned the tractor over on its side. And of course, the wheels were still turning. I had to reach in and turn off the key.
But everybody was okay, and the gas tank
Jim
didn't.
was okay, and the gas didn't leak out of the tank, and the big tank didn't fall over.
And yeah, that could have been even more of it.
Were you really scared when you had to do that? Because you knew
Oh
it.
yeah, because the tractor was, these big wheels were moving.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I was
also you
afraid
could.
that Jim would be hurt. Yeah.
Well, also you could all blow up.
Well, I didn't. That didn't.
Didn't come across your mind at that point.
But that was one of the great emotional sadness to this day of my life. That when Dad came home that night, he was so angry. He thrashed Jim within an inch of his life.
Did it hurt the tractor?
No,
Oh.
you could pull it back over. But he really lost it beating Jim. And Chuck and I had a real hard time with that.
Yes.
Did you have any other incidents like that, like in terms of accidents when you were young?
Well, just occasionally you'd run over an animal, so you'd have to instantly have a butchering. So if you broke the leg of a cow or a pig, you'd kill them and butcher them. So it had a good effect in that sense, but sad. But the saddest thing, of course, my dog Blackie, which came with us from the farm in the city in Rushville, when we got a tractor and then you have a mower that you pull, and it has a blade out here. And Blackie liked to chase the birds and rabbits that it's that scared up. And one day he missed the end of it and cut one of his legs off.
Oh.
And, like the dog that Kevin and Lori have.
Was he put down, or did he become a
Well, no,
three-legged dog?
he lived for several months, but he got so frightened of storms and things, and just we had to put him down eventually. Yeah.
I used to get frightened of storms out there.
Well, pretty real. Yeah, and then speaking of storms, about once a summer, lightning would strike somebody's barn, and you'd see this explosion of fire, and you'd go racing down trying to help.
Yes.
The people who owned horses, they'd lead the horses out, but the horses were so scared they'd run back into the barn. So often the farmers would lose some of their horses. So you'd go down and you'd help hold the horses so they wouldn't run back.
Yes.
And then one of the storms that hit our farm hit the north barn and burned a hole in the roof down through the hay all the way to the ground, and didn't
catch anything
on fire except the hole would burn down.
Wow, that's incredible,
so we
isn't
were
it?
incredibly lucky because that
right, would have burned the whole barn down.
No way to save it. Yeah.
Do you have any pig stories?
Well,
because did you have to put the rings in their noses or anything like that?
Several pig stories. Yeah. Somehow, to me, pigs were more lovable than any other animal. So one summer I adopted Porky. He lived out in the Westfield, and he'd come and lay down, and I'd scratch his belly, and then he'd go running off. And Mom and Dad promised they'd never sell him. So one day while I was doing something in the chicken yard, listening to a ball game, the stock truck came and
took Porky
off. And I was very sad. So I wrote an essay for my class in school about
Porky.
Got an A on it.
Chuck said you never name your animals. That else it becomes hard to.
Yeah.
You get attached
Hard
to
to
them.
eat them or send them off to the.
Dad liked to name the cows after our girlfriends, so one cow
So
was
it's
named
easy to
Brenda.
butcher them.
No, they didn't butcher
Brenda
them.
went off to slaughter.
They got milked because he
And
didn't
then-
have any
then one of the great
beef cows.
Stories was he named one when Vera came to visit. He named one Vera.
Oh, that's great.
Vera's been very proud of that.
That.
A cow named after Vera.
We'll have to take a quick break to show the sleeping animals. Bronx.
Totally excited by our family.
By our conversation, Trudy in her basket, totally snoring away. Bronx takes up a lot of space.
It's so good.
Very
The
good.
best dog.
Did you remember it being hard to take care of pigs? You said they were very lovable.
One of the things I give great thanks for is the kind of, Dad worked in Minneapolis, that time he was working at Allison's. And I was expected with Mother to do most of the work, Monday through Friday. That if it was going to get done, we had to do it. And it had to be done by 7:30 in the morning to catch the school bus. So that was fun. It didn't seem like work, milking the cows, feeding the pigs, and then having a quick breakfast, and running out the front door and catching the bus.
But you didn't have to put rings in their nose, so they didn't.
Well, yeah, you had to do that. You had to.
Was that hard? I can't even imagine.
Well, Dad did that.
Oh, okay.
You had a crate. You had a crate that had a V, and pig would put his head in there, and you'd close that, and his head would be out like this, and you stick a ring in it.
And what was the ring for?
So they wouldn't
root. They would come under
They
fences
dig.
and things along
Oh, I didn't have any idea about. I don't remember that at all.
I only remember it because of Bonnie Linville and her husband.
And to make them grow fatter, you had to castrate them. So that was even more of a.
Oh.
Did you put them in a similar
The
cage?
same cage, head in the same. worked over back end. Yeah. Dad used this a straight razor blade.
Did he just like
cut out the testicles
sear them shut?
Oh, I guess because without the
No, there was no medication. It was
Just
you yourself.
testosterone or something made
Yeah.
them get fatter,
Get fatter, yeah.
more tasty.
So that was and of course, some people in Rushville like to eat the results of that, calling them mountain oysters.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
But that was
So-
never a Stiers family favorite.
So your dad was farming and working at Allison?
Yeah, he was a weekend farmer. Yeah, 'cause that. In terms of the farm itself, there were 3 major 20-acre fields, and our science was we had corn one year, wheat another year, and then alfalfa the third year, and then they would rotate. And the alfalfa renewed your land, so it didn't get. He used cow manure. We said cow manure. We didn't have a lot of it. Some pig manure, some chicken manure. So that was liberally spread, but it wouldn't cover 20 acres.
Right, so you just spread what you had.
So we had to use artificial fertilizer. Yeah. And so in terms of planting the corn, that was a family affair. Did that on weekends with Dad. And then initially plowing the corn to get the weeds out between the rows of corn. Richard did that.
He'd come down to your farm
He'd
and
come
do
down,
that.
but by the time that Dad lost it, Richard would sort of plow like this.
Yeah.
A lot of plants were
We're run
plowed
over.
up.
So I did not do it well.
So when I was doing it, we'd just go very slow. But that was interesting work and hot. But again, Mother came out frequently with lemonade and iced tea to make it all bearable.
Now, were Jim and Chuck were younger?
Yeah.
Did they help with some of this eventually? or-
Eventually, yeah. But again, I was in high school. I was still pretty much
Head foreman.
head foreman. we when the combining the wheat, I would drive the tractor and pull the combine and take it out and do it. That was lots of fun to do that. Dusty, but fun. Yeah.
So you would plant in May
Yeah, school got out about mid-May, and so it was planting time when the school was out. So the farm kids were there to help.
and then you'd reap in the fall?
In October, yeah.
In October.
Some of my harvest sermons from Old Greenwich, I've told some of those stories. Of the first year we harvest the corn on the hilltop and at home by horse and wagon. And you pick the corn off and throw it in the wagon. And we all rode down in the wagon behind the horses, Grandma Molson. We pushed her up on the thing. She helped us. And deer were running through the cornfields there. It was very poetic.
So it was an extended family affair when you did
that first year,
because Grandpa was helping his dad at the hilltop because he didn't own the hilltop then.
That's right. Yeah, but he was planting it and harvesting. They're probably splitting the profit or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that was a fun memory. Yeah.
And when was he able to buy the whole 160, the other 80 acres?
Bill never let him do it.
Okay, so that's why they still lived in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but though the 80 was south of the road, so it wasn't towards Chuck's farm, but it was
Right.
It was across the road basically. Yeah. So, but again, that first year, another fabulous thing was the thrashing rings, with the big steam engine coming down the road.
Wow.
And there were you had rings, so there were about 12 or 14 families that had wheat to harvest. So Dad would hire various people to come in and cut the wheat by hand and shock it. And then people would come in and put it on wagons and drive it to the thrashing machine and then the big steam engine, the big belt that ran it. So you'd bring the wagon up and you'd throw the bundles of hay in there, and it would blow the straw up in a straw stack and put the grain over here on this. And that was hugely exciting.
Yeah, wow. Well, and saving hours of work doing it.
And at that point, the hilltop was rented to a man whose name I'll come to in a minute, but he was one of the chief workers for us in a couple, 2 or 3 years there.
So when they did that, did you get to take the hay home for?
Well, no, you just had this big, in the middle of your lot, you had this big stack of straw, which then you used for your cows and, the old thing, needle in the haystack. I'm sure.
And then they would take the grain away for you?
To sell it, yeah.
Okay.
To sell it. Yeah.
And did you listen to the radio back then?
Well, part of this, but the beauty of this was the 14 wives would come to whatever house where the ring was, and you'd put these huge tables out in the front yard, and they'd cook all morning. You'd have this humongous meal for lunch, and you'd eat all you wanted to eat. And everything you wanted to eat.
Well, you'd be
Well,
pretty
you were-
hungry too.
Yeah,
It
all
was
that
pretty
work.
exciting as a kid, and these were, big husky farmers and a lot of kids around. So it was
Fun.
fun, yeah. And we did that about 3 years, and then Dad was able to buy his own combine. Yeah. So his early years were very primitive, but lots of fun.
But did Grandpa listen to the radio back then to like listen to the grain prices and stuff?
Not very much, yeah. But Russia was so close, you just drive in and talk to the guy at the
Grain silo.
Yeah. Yeah, Jackson Street ended at the grain silo, and that's where the trains were and such, and the train station. So you drive in, and it's always less than you wanted, because the price was based on how much moisture was in the grain, whether it was wheat or corn or oats. And later on, after I went to college and graduate school, he built a drying bed out in the straw lot with some kind of heater in it. So they would store the grain in there
And then you
for
get
several months and
get a
dry it
better
out
price.
and then get a better price.
because it would be not as
Yeah.
wet.
Yeah. So, but we didn't have that kind of sophistication initially.
And what about the schools that you went to when you were?
Well, Webb School was still there at that point, and it was just beyond the English farm, so it was really one farm away. And if I missed the bus there, I could walk.
Right.
Did you go to when you lived on Jackson Street? Were you old enough to go to school?
Oh yeah, I started school in Rushville, at Belgrade. Went through 5 grades there. We moved before my 5th grade was over, so the town gave me permission to take the high school bus to finish my 5th grade at Belgrade. So I got to know a lot of kids on the bus route.
you
So the
started
teacher that you
sixth
have the
grade.
picture of,
Grace Spugel.
she was there.
Teacher.
She wasn't at Webb.
We were in the midst of building this, about the size of this table, a model of the Indianapolis airport. The guys were. So I was a part of that team. And I wanted to finish that.
Well, I'm sure Grandpa supported you in that
very,
effort.
very proud of that, yeah. So then the next year I started 6th grade at Webb. And there were 2 grades in a room. It was the 5th grade and 6th grade were there. So Mr. Rush was our teacher. And he really turned, like Abby, he really turned us on to Roman and Greek mythology and Roman history. He made that. They was all going to be archaeologists. And of course, we all got to play sports because there weren't very many of us.
So everybody had to.
So softball and volleyball and basketball. So it was really neat because you had a sense of worth, who you were, because you. And then in 7th grade, they had a little tiny store. I volunteered to work in the store.
So how far did Webb go up?
8th grade.
8th grade. That's when you went to.
So 8th grade, I was the manager of the store. I was responsible for opening the store and closing it each day and counting the money and make sure we got it all right. It was a lot
What
of
did they
fun.
sell in the store?
Candy.
Stuff for the kids.
Stuff for the kids, yeah. I don't think we sold Cokes, but we sold lots of candy. Yeah. And you had to decide which candy is selling best and which isn't, so you had to order accordingly. So it was a good little economic project.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your favorite candy was back then?
I think probably a Babe Ruth bar.
Some things haven't changed too much. Peanut butter.
But in 7th and 8th grade, Mrs. Ping was our teacher. She taught both grades. And she was a great entertainer. We just had lots of fun with her. I Love Lucy. It's just starting on television. So, like I say, it was on Monday night. She would spend the first half of the morning on Tuesday giving a replay. Laugh by laugh of what had happened on I Love Lucy.
But you
So,
guys
of course, the
didn't have.
kids loved her.
Did you have a TV by
Yes.
then?
No. So that's why it was so interesting. She did. And
So she could.
I don't think anybody in our group, maybe Joe Booth might have had a TV, but nobody else did. Yeah. So it was really fabulous. Wow, this
And
is
of course,
neat.
that show was so funny. So
Oh, yeah.
It was probably
Yeah, she could-
great to be able to
Yeah.
replay that.
And she was a great ham actress. So that was good. And then in 8th grade, we those days you got lots of government surplus food. So once a month you'd have to take the school bus and go to Rushville and go to a warehouse and load the school bus full of all peanut butter and soup.
Oh, so this was for the lunches
for lunches. So,
for
yeah,
everybody.
So we'd get the 8th grade boys got drafted. There were like 6, 7 of us. So a lot of us. We'd get drafted to go, and that was a fun diversion.
Did you have to pay for your lunches, or were they? Did you get them at school?
I'm sure we had to pay for something, yeah, but minimal. Yeah. I tried carrying my lunch. I went through a phase of peanut butter and onions which lost all my friends temporarily. But I soon gave that up. Mother cooked for a while when Chuck was there, but not during my time.
Oh, at the school?
At the school. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then, so ninth through
9th grade, we
12th
got the buses back into,
to go down to Rushville.
which was exciting for me for two reasons. One, all the kids I knew at Belgrade were now my friends again at school. Plus a few of us from Webb, just a handful. But that was really neat. And then cousin David Molson was the star of the football team.
Oh. Is he older than you?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize
So
that.
he was a halfback, and we didn't win many games. If we ever scored a touchdown, David always scored it.
Yay!
So in 9th grade, Mrs. Knight was my algebra teacher, and she had been Mother's teacher. And Mother, was editor of the school paper. So Mrs. Knight recruited me to be the sports writer for the paper. So the first couple of years, I was one of a couple of kids that did it. In my junior and senior year, I was the only sports writer, so I got to go to.
So who was David's parents? David Molson.
Well, that's Mother's brother Arthur was his father.
Okay,
and
so
Ruby was his mother.
So Louise's parents were Sally and Henry.
Harry.
And Harry.
Yeah.
And so Sally and Harry's children.
Again, we're Zelma, Arthur, Mildred, Evelyn, and Louise. I think that's it. No, there were 7. There were 2 more missing. Who am I missing?
That's okay. But then the
Evelyn's who we met at reunion, Molson reunion.
Could have been, yeah. Her daughter Judy is the famous organist in Fort Wayne.
oh, so who was David's?
David.
Arthur.
Arthur was
Okay.
a Molson. And Arthur was a bank teller. And Ruby was in the records office at the courthouse, so she knew everything. I mean, all the gossip. So every other Sunday we'd met at Grandma Molson's for lunch. And kids would listen carefully. What's going on in Rushville?
Get all the good gossip.
All the good gossip.
Rich, when we were teenagers, who was it who worked in the dispatch at the police station?
Oh, it wasn't.
Was
I
it a
don't think
Molson?
worked there. Yes, I think it might have been.
Julie? Was
No.
David's? Was it David's daughter or? David's
No,
sister?
they listened to the police
Blotter.
on their CB radio, because that was the time when
You got
I
this.
got pulled over by the police for speeding, and yes, I think it was one of the Molsons who heard it on the police blotter and then was talking about it in church the next morning. This is when Chuck sent me to get some kind of screw for the kitchen or something at the hardware store. So I got in the car, no wallet, no driver's license. I think $2 in my pocket.
No, you know what? She did work in dispatch because the police. The story goes that the police officer called and she vouched for you. She goes, she is indeed Gretchen Stiers.
So which Molson was it though?
So David had 2 kids.
It was one of the children.
It's either one of David's children or one of David. Did David have brothers and sisters, Dad? Did he have a sister?
David Molson?
Yeah.
No, he was an only child.
So I think it was his daughter.
Right, because they were like, and then of course because Chuck and Pam's cars were like the wrecks, there was no registration in the car to who it belonged to. So all I could say was, I'm Gretchen Stiers, I'm Chuck Stiers' niece, take pity on me. And then I even got more excited because when I got to the hardware store, there were 3 guys in the front of the store. It was an old store with wooden floors, and they were in rocking chairs, smoking. And they're like, oh dear, what do you need? And I'm like, I need this. They're like, no, you don't need that. Who are you anyway? Oh, Chuck Stiers' niece. Oh, Chuck doesn't need that. I said, well, that's what he said. He said, well, let's call Chuck and find out what Chuck needs. They're like, oh, we'll find it for you.
So Chuck was right.
I think in the end Chuck was right, but they did not believe me whatsoever. They're like, well, what is he using it for? You know, what is he doing? No, he doesn't need that. Let's call him. They called him. It's like, oh yes, I guess that is what Chuck needed after all. So we'll get one for you. It was like probably a 2-cent nail, screw or something. It was not a big purchase. But I drove home slowly.
So, speaking of police in Rushville, Dad, how did you end up getting locked in the jail
Oh, in Rushville
during
jail.
lunch?
Oh, well,
What had you done to the...
I can't remember what age I was, but on Jackson Street, at that time, the sheriff lived. Grinstead? Anyway.
Close by.
His daughter and I tricycled together. So we were pretty young. Anyway, one of my perverse streaks, I took her around the corner and left her and then rode my tricycle back. And she was abandoned. Yeah.
So she was unhappy.
I'm very unhappy. So her father was unhappy too, to put it. So as time went by, we both ended up in high school together. So her father was still sheriff. So she invited me down to the jailhouse one day. This was my freshman year in high school. And she said, would you like to see what a cell was like? Oh, sure, yeah. So I went in and clicked by.
He said, this is for abandoning me when I was...
Nancy said, this is for abandoning me when I was this big or whatever it was. We got a big man. So she went away, left me there for about an hour.
Oh, wow. Well, that's long enough.
So about how long I left her on the other street. So, it was tit for tat. Yeah.
I couldn't remember what the story was. I couldn't remember if you had like chopped off her hair or stuck her hair in ink or...
No, I didn't.
Just
wasn't ever guilty of that. Well, that happened a lot because you sat in rows in those days and you had ink wells. So
you could have if you were...
Frequently the girls with long hair would have it dipped into it. I was... Didn't do that kind of prank. Yeah.
Well, do you have any sort of like special stories or memories about your mother? About things that, or just memories of her? You said, she took care of the chickens, or... Well,
because when I was home, before I went to college, she was always there. Dad was working in Indianapolis, so he left at 6 in the morning and got home at 6:30 in the evening. So we'd do these chores in the morning and rush and have breakfast, and Mother was always there to be a part of that. But she always met us when we got off the school bus at the end of the day. So we had this kind of precious, maybe 30 minutes with her. And she'd always say what happened during the day, and we'd garble it out. And so that made us very, very close with her. I think we enjoyed going to the Molsons every other Sunday for the meal.
And was this Grandma Sally's?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then, because we kids would be sent off to the movies to see the cowboy movies at the
Rushville Theater.
They had two in those days. The Princess was the fancy place, and the Castle that showed the cowboy movies. We went to the Castle.
I think that's maybe where we saw our movies too.
Castle.
But now the Stiers, they love to come to the farm. So about once a month, the Chases would show up, and those were grand times. And then the Gardeners would come, and then we'd have these huge baseball games out in the front yard of the farm. And those were lots of food. Again, lots of food, lots of fun.
Because you were pretty close to your cousins.
Yeah, we didn't...
Growing up, so...
Because not being in town during high school years, just wasn't a chance to develop those kind of normal friendship things.
So were you closest to, was it Gene Wagner when you were growing up?
Close to Gene, but Alan was really probably the closest. Yeah. So when he and his wife got married, I was invited to be the best man, and that was a big.
Oh yeah, there's a nice picture in the book.
Big honor to do that. But the year before, he and I had given permission to go out to Illinois to the Church of God youth rally in Springfield, Illinois, and that was lots of fun, just on our own.
So if Lolita was the first to join Church of God, so she converted Chase too?
Well, Chase married
Francis,
whose father was the head maintenance man at Anderson College. So that's how Chase got into the Church of God, was through Francis. So Lolita and Francis were the religious pillars of the family.
And what was Harold out in Nebraska? Were they?
They were Methodist, I think. Yeah, but he was fire chief, so that was his claim to fame.
So Chase and Francis's children were Alan,
Alan, Mark, Jerry,
Stanley.
and Stanley.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't know Jerry's real name was Geraldine until
Ger-
today.
Oh,
I think it's
from the-
Geraldine from the.
Yeah, it wasn't really right.
It wasn't Jerry.
But she was a big tomboy, so she related well to the farm. And somehow she was around a lot when we were harvesting, once we got our own equipment. And,
Well, I think you told me a story one time where like they would come and visit, but you would sleep all together in the not like in your bedroom,
In
but
the smokehouse.
yeah.
the guys would be out there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
6 in a bed.
It was a lot, yeah.
Staying
Lots
warm.
of toes.
It was much fun, yeah. We had big plans to stay up all night, but we'd soon fall asleep, And then, I guess, people would be in plays or graduations from various,
Right, so you'd go
8th
to,
grade graduation, and that we'd go to that. So that was always a big deal. Richard was the big star. He was in all the plays in Manila High School. So we went to a lot of plays to see Richard in the plays.
oh wow,
Yeah, and
didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
neat.
so
So how did you get to Illinois? Did you go on a school bus?
I think Alan had a car, so he must have picked me up and drove out. That's why it was such a big deal. A, we got to drive, and to hear these famous people who were very good speakers, and that many kids. It was a lot of fun being around that many kids.
But that must have been like the farthest before you went to. I mean, before you went to college, that you ever traveled, right?
No, when I don't know, I was like 8 or 9, Grandpa and Grandma Stiers invited me to go to Nebraska with them. So we wanted to go through all the Rushvilles.
That were along the route.
No, maybe Rushville, Indiana, Rushville, Illinois, Rushville, Iowa, and then to Hastings, not Hastings, but Geneva, Nebraska.
That's where Harold and
Gladys
were.
yeah. But again, I had a milkshake and a hamburger at every stop.
Oh, I think I might be sick by the time I got
Didn't
there.
want to, but Gladys, you may or may not remember, was the telephone operator. And in those days, you had to go through the operator to make a phone call. So at night she would take me with her down to the exchange, and we'd call Mom and Dad back in Indiana.
Oh, that's neat.
So my homesickness was dealt with by able to talk to
Well,
her.
how long
each night.
was this trip for?
We must have said a week or something like
Mhm.
that. Or the whole thing took 10 days.
Right,
Yeah,
but then you got to talk to your parents.
yeah, so that was all doable.
But you went with Grandpa Ben and
Hazel.
Hazel.
Yeah.
How was that?
Oh, it was fun. Yeah. It was a big honor to be invited to go.
Because you probably spent more time with Grandma Sally, right? Because she had lived down the street
Yeah,
from you.
yeah. And then in the early days, Billy was when they came every summer. Billy was lots of fun, and we had a great time when he was there. Chuck and Brenda were always buddy, but Billy and I were very close at that we lived in Rushville, and so it was fun going out and seeing him.
And do you remember Ben coming to visit?
Less frequently. Of course, he was in the Navy, but he came later on. Yeah.
Do you have any special stories or memories about Chuck and Jim when you were all kids?
Oh, lots of those. To get Chuck and I together to ask that question.
To ask that question.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll do that.
We see who can outlie the other.
See if there's any truth.
But again, we had this the web school period, then the high school period, then I went off to college, and that was sort of the end of my relationship with the farm, because once I went to college, I had these churches in the summer, so I didn't come back and farm after that. So I really got divorced from the life going on the farm at that point, because I was on my professional track at that point. So Chuck and Dad and Jim did continue to do the farming, and more cows and more this and more that, and more mechanized and bigger tractors and such. So now, one of the stories that Chuck will talk about too, were one that we were given hose and we had to go out in the cornfield and hoe the weeds, because the tractor would miss some as you went down these places.
Yep.
So, and we get tired and upset and throw rocks at each other and
Yeah, it's hot.
hot, yeah, and that was
Yes.
Chuck didn't like that at all.
Well, he probably didn't like the time you shot him between the eyes with the BB gun.
Yes,
either.
yeah, that was a pretty good shot, so I got him right between the eyes. With the BB. Not a very good memory.
brotherly love,
Yeah.
so to speak.
So, Dad, you told me a story that the worst thing you ever did, you broke somebody's window with a baseball, and Grandma Sally washed your mouth out with soap? Or am I getting the two things?
No, while we lived in Rushville, I was very much in love with Wilma Plow. Yeah, this would be fifth grade or younger, maybe fourth grade. I think I was beginning to discover girls were girls at that point. So I remember I kissed Donna Wagner on the middle of the street over in front of Grandpa and Grandma's house. I got spanked by Grandpa for that, and then spanked by my parents for that.
Oh.
Now she's now Donna Wagner.
Yeah.
Well, then Wilma wouldn't talk to me, so one morning I found it in the street, found an empty glass beer can, and I just threw it through the front window of the house.
Oh, wow, Dad.
That's when you got your mouth washed out with soap?
Yes, they of course knew who it was.
And
they were just about 5 houses from where we lived, so it was a pretty stupid thing to do. They get caught, yeah.
Well, thanks for telling us all of these memories and about the family tree. And
yeah, sadly, both these women who were very important in my imagination, Nancy, that locked me in jail, and Wilma, all died before our 25th high school reunion. So
oh, that's too
I
bad.
didn't have a chance to kind of know them and their maturity. And laugh about some of these crazy things.
Cancer or due to probably
I don't remember.
Yeah, but something. All right.
Well, glad you're interested in this, and I say Chuck will give another version.
That's all right. Multiple versions are good before we all forget.
I remember that when you were growing up, you listened to the radio a lot. Is that my mythology?
No, one of the things that was permitted while you were studying at night was to sit at the desk and do your homework, but have the Philco radio on with music.
Where did you have a desk?
In that little room where the gas stove was.
Oh, okay, yeah. Grandma had her desk there.
Yeah, so that was, I studied desk when I was in high school.
You didn't have to share it with Chuck? Or he...
I didn't know. So got to listen. And then, of course, the baseball was, you could kick the radio outside.
Hey, Truthster. Hi, honey. Oh, look at
Do you
you.
remember when you
Oh,
had
such a
TV?
sweetheart.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
that
you
was a huge
are.
deal.
Yes, you are
Dad
such a
decided we
sweetheart.
had it.
Okay.
There was some
Yeah.
20-foot pipe
Okay.
laying around the
Okay.
barnyard that had been part of the gas well.
Oh, yeah.
So he welded 2 of those together and put this 40-foot
Such a
Antenna.
sweetie.
antenna up with
Oh.
old-fashioned, thing that had
Grid.
Such
grid,
a sweetheart. Oh,
We only
yeah.
got 2 stations. We got Dayton,
Wow.
and we got a station in Indianapolis.